Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me one quick favor, see that little black subscribe button on the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, hit that little black subscribe button. Really does help this channel grow, my audience grow, and I appreciate it more than you know. Also, quick thank you to our presenting sponsor, Betfred Sportsbook and the Betfred Sportsbook app. Bet $50 on any game. Get up to $1,111 in free bets courtesy of the Betfred Sportsbook. Thank you again. Now, here's the video that you came here for. Let's talk Pac-12 over-under win totals. And let's start with, listen, they're not the reigning champion, but I would argue probably the most interesting team. That is the USC Trojans. USC's over-under win total in the Betfred Sportsbook is 9.5 wins. The money coming in on the over at -170. To bet the under, you got to bet it at +140. Now, before we get into this particular USC team, let me say this. I think it's easy because of how he left Oklahoma, because of some of the hubris, whatever you want to say. I think it's easy to overlook just how good Lincoln Riley was in year one at USC. And I know he was able to bring Caleb Williams with him. And I know the transfer portal. I get how all of that works. But why I bring it up, this was a 4-8 team that Lincoln Riley took over. Year one, they finished 11-1 in the regular season. They're playing Utah in the Pac-12 championship game to go to the college football playoff. Remember, they win that game. They are going to the college football playoff. It speaks to the incredible job that Lincoln Riley did. And so I don't want that to be lost. Is like, again, everyone thinks, oh, it's Lincoln Riley, whatever. He was really good in year one, and there is optimism as to why they will be even better in year two. And obviously, look, that optimism starts with Caleb Williams. You don't need me to beat around the bush. You don't need me to, whatever. We all know how good number 13 is. He was special. He won the Heisman Trophy. He was a deserving Heisman Trophy winner because that offense was on fire all season long. Third nationally in scoring, third nationally in total offense. He himself just put up video game numbers, 4,500 yards, 42 touchdowns, just 5 interceptions. And as I said last year, it wasn't just that he put up big numbers. It was that his team needed him to be great every single week. You go back and look at some of those wins and obviously the one loss that they had during the regular season. Just look at what Caleb Williams had to do for those USC Trojans last year. Again, you go back to a season ago. Remember, they lost their only loss in the regular season, 43-42 at Utah when Jordan Addison gets hurt. Had to put up 42 points. Caleb Williams did it. Had to put up 45 points to beat Arizona 45-37, beat Cal 41-35, beat UCLA 48-45. So every single week, they needed Caleb Williams to be great, and he delivered. Good news for USC, plenty around him again. Obviously, you did lose Travis Dye at running back. You did lose Jordan Addison, a first-round pick at wide receiver. But at the same time, reloaded as USC and Lincoln Riley do in this transfer portal era. Austin Jones comes back. He was with the team a year ago. Almost 800 yards rushing, was the team's second leading rusher a season ago. Also, remember, Marshawn Lloyd, who was the other USC, South Carolina, he was their leading rusher a season ago as well. So a nice 1-2, a two-headed attack at the running back position. At the wide receiver position, Taj Washington is back after catching 50 balls last year. Mario Williams caught 40 balls. Brendan Rice caught 39. They combined for 15 touchdowns. And that's before you factor in that they also added a 5-star wide receiver in Zachariah Branch, a 5-star tight end in Deuce Robinson, and a 4-star wide receiver in Mekhi Lemon. Bring it all up to say that while Ohio State probably gets the most credit for its wide receiver room, I would argue that USC's is as good as anybody's, and Caleb Williams will have no shortage of tools in his toolbox, guys to get the ball to, which I expect Lincoln Riley to always be able to do. Of course, as good as that offense was, I just referenced it, we got to talk defense, and this is a big part of, do you believe in USC, not only for the over-under win total, but also, do you believe in them potentially to make the playoff, to win the Pac-12 and make the playoff? Well, here's the thing. There's good and bad when we talk about that defense. The bad, the raw statistics, okay? You go back last year, they were not very good. 93rd nationally in points per game allowed, 29 per game, 105th nationally, giving up over 423 yards per game a season ago. There is some good news with it, though. One, as bad as those stats were, USC did something at just an insane clip on defense. Well, besides giving up points anyway, that is, they forced an insane number of turnovers. I remember talking about this on this show, on the Aaron Torres pod. USC finished last year, this is a mind-boggling stat, plus 22 in turnover margin. That means for people who are novice to football, and I don't think any of you are, that means that they forced 22 more turnovers than their opponents. You extrapolate that out to 14 games, that's close to like 2 turnovers per game more than their opponents that they forced. And so that was the good news. That was how they were able to stay competitive. And the other good news is, listen, in this portal world, they did a reasonably good job of restocking this roster, especially through the portal. They brought in a pair of 5-star-ish transfers on the defensive line. Bear Alexander, who began his career at Georgia, transferred it in the spring. Anthony Lucas was part of that historic Texas A&M recruiting class 2 years ago. He transferred in the winter. You also added Mason Cobb, a linebacker from Oklahoma State that was their leading tackler. Traquan Fagans, a cornerback from Alabama. So listen, you add defensive pieces from Georgia, Alabama, who am I blanking on? Oklahoma State and Texas A&M. You could do a lot worse, okay? Also bring back some important pieces, especially at linebacker. Shane Lee, Eric Gentry, your 2 best linebackers a year ago, are returning this year. Here's where I get a little concerned with USC, though. And again, the over-under is 9.5. But look, this is an over-under show. But in the big picture, I think a lot of people think in year 2 under Lincoln Riley, they can make the playoff. Here's the problem. A couple problems. First of all, the schedule is brutal. The schedule was clearly put together before everybody thought that USC and UCLA were the only teams leaving after this year. This schedule feels like the Pac-12 does not want USC to succeed this year, okay? First half of the schedule is easy. By the way, worth noting, USC does play a week 0 game. Unfortunately, it's on the Pac-12 network, so I don't know how many of you will be able to watch it. But the first half of USC's schedule is manageable. Problem is the second half is insane. From mid-October on, here is the schedule. At Notre Dame, Utah, which beat USC twice at the Coliseum, Cal, obviously manageable, Washington at home, at Oregon, UCLA at home. So as we get through this Pac-12 preview, you'll understand how hard that schedule is. But at Notre Dame, Utah is going to be a top 20 team, beat USC twice. Washington at home, Washington will be ranked in the top 15. At Oregon, Oregon will be ranked in the top 15, UCLA. 5 teams that are probably going to be ranked in the preseason top 25, 2 of them on the road. Bad weather in Eugene and South Bend expected for those games. The other things that really kind of concern me with USC are pretty straightforward. First, we talked about that turnover margin, and it would concern me if I was a Trojans fan. Not that they were plus 22, but because is that something that is really sustainable going forward into this year? I always look when I do this stuff at outlier stats, right? Stats that are just extremes one way or the other. I'll give you an example. I remember last year, Michigan State, I believe, had won the previous year when they won 11 games. They had won like 5 games by a single possession. And I just said to myself going into last year, I said the odds of them going 5-0 in 1 possession games probably is not very likely. And of course, Michigan State flatlined and they were a total mess. Well, I look at USC and I look at the fact that so many of their games came down to 1 play, 1 turnover, 1 whatever. And if they're plus 10 in turnover margin, which by the way is incredible, they're probably like 9-3 in the regular season, not 11-1. So you add that in with the concerns that remain on the defense up front. I understand they added 2 SEC transfers on the defensive line. The problem is when you're talking about USC and you're talking about a team that wants to compete at the highest levels, you know how many they have 2 SEC caliber defensive linemen. Georgia has like 12 of them. Alabama has like 11 of them. LSU has like 9 of them. USC's got 2. And so I think this team will be a little bit of a better facsimile of what they were last year. A lot of points, an improved defense, but is it going to be good enough, especially with that late schedule? This is my official pick on USC. I will not be betting. If I had to make a lean, I would go over the 9.5 wins, but I would go 10-2 and say they probably don't make the playoff. Where do the losses come from? I don't know, but that schedule is thankless, especially late. It is one big game after another, couple big road trips. This team is really good. I don't see them as a playoff type team.